It's a planning commission.
Yeah, but he can still call for it. You want to still call for it? Okay, we'll have you call for it.
You're up.
All right, we'll have you call order. So,
Don't
yeah.
break it, it's the only way.
Just as a G1 will be a discussion item between all of you guys, but every item after that, the only one who can vote on it will be planning commission, because planning commission related items. So they'll call the meeting to order and they'll adjourn the meeting. And of course, that includes you guys in conversation. Okay. All right.
All right, call me.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, be with us this evening as we do the business for the city and the community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Danny, can you advance the slide? Clicker's not working from here. This is item G. This is the approval of the agenda.
I make a motion we approve the agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Very good. This item G, citizens' comments. Anyone at this point, you're welcome to comment on anything you deem necessary. You're allowed 3 minutes. You must state your first and last name. We do have an open hearing for the Circle C variance, so if you're here for that agenda item, we do have an open hearing for that item. So, Mr. Chair, at this point, you can open citizens' comments.
We'll open citizens' comment.
Very good. Come on up. First and last name and your address right next to it.
Hello, my name is Trevor Beisel. I am with Kelson RV, new business here in town. I don't know if this is the right time for me to bring this up, but we're gonna find out. I'm trying to get pre-approval for a sign to get put up for my company. Our grand opening is coming up here in June, and our sign is currently going through a approval process, but it won't be approved until later in June. So I'm seeing if I can get pre-approval from you guys to get a 36-inch base on my sign to make it more of a monument sign ahead of time, so we can get that up and going before my grand opening coming up here soon.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Is that it?
Come on up. That probably works a little better. First and last name, address.
Okay, my name is Amanda Treadwell. I live at 410 Richards Road. I was contacted today about a concern from some of our community members, and this is their first time speaking, so they're a little nervous. So basically the concern that was brought up, and then they can kind of speak to the concern specifically to them, was the school district has now put up a fence where the Challenger School is, that separates the Goddard Senior Homes, Goddard Senior Apartments, and Easy Place area. Which now kind of makes the accessibility a little bit harder than what it was before. Before there wasn't a fence and you could just walk through the trees. So kids leaving school that live in that neighborhood over there, or seniors having access to the community garden, having access to the path, had a more accessible access. There is now a fence there, and I've been told that that is blocked. So I'll let them share kind of their concern that they brought to me today.
So my name is Jessica Bennett, and I live at 718 Timmy Court. Last week, my daughter was trying to ride her bike to school. She goes to Oak Street. From our neighborhood, she was able to cut through Challenger parking lot and go down 3rd or 4th Street to Oak Street. She was able to get to school fine. On the way home, the gate was locked. She had to call me and tell me, say, Mom, I can't get home. So I ended up having to leave work a little early to go pick her up. She's only 9. The only other access is either cutting through people's private property or going out on Kellogg, which is not safe for a 9-year-old. So my question is to you, do you have another path, or do you guys have a plan to put accessibility, sidewalks, etc. to to our neighborhood, to give us access.
Yeah, we've been cut off from our neighborhood into the city. We can't walk to the downtown park or anywhere. Everything's basically accessed through private properties and Kellogg, like you said.
The 2 streets that we have over there in that neighborhood by the water tower, there's 12 plus kids that go to schools. Challenger, Oak Street, and so it's really important for us to be able to have access to that.
Since the fence has gone up, none of those kids have been able to walk to school. So sometimes the gates are unlocked, sometimes they're locked. But there's been, the majority of times it's been locked.
So that's our concern.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Just to sum up, the seniors that live in that community, this Goddard Senior Home, the Goddard Senior Apartments, I am aware that this is affecting them as well. Like I said, getting to the garden or getting to walking path. I know that we talked about safe streets and working on that and some of the sidewalk programs and plans, and I would love to see this included in that. Or maybe just conversations with the school district to see how we can make that work together with that new fencing to make it a success. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Mike, we'll close citizens' comments.
All right, closing citizens' comments. Honorable Planning Commission City Council, I spoke with the school about the fence, so we can talk about that later if you'd like. So, item E, consent agenda. This is the approval of the minutes. This is to approve the minutes from April 13th, and just as a quick reminder, we had an area of influence modification, preliminary replat of 167 West Edition, the final replat of 167 West Edition, road name change for Goddard Galleria, zoning amendment to C2, variance for lot size requirements, variance for urban property group, modification to R1, modification to R2, official zoning map change, and removal of the R1A from the zoning regulations. So at this point, looking for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Very good. Click. Old business, there is none. New business, this is our joint 2-family resolution structure. We're going to go ahead and invite Ryan Peck, our city attorney, to come up, and he'll introduce it and walk through some of the more legal justification behind it, and then we'll dive into the design, and then of course open it up for discussion. So at this point, Mr. Peck.
Thanks, Mike. I think I have met most, if not all of you. I'm Ryan. I am with Morris Lang Law Firm, and I'm also the city attorney. So we are kicking off a conversation about a joint resolution and proposed restrictive covenant that would be required as part of the rezoning process associated with R2, R3, and R4 districts. This is something that, if adopted, it would be utilized on a going forward basis with new developments coming online. It would not apply to any existing developments, any areas that have already been rezoned. Cities have wide latitude when it comes to regulating land use. That is in part due to the wide latitude that's given with regard to restricting, protecting police powers, protecting the health, welfare, safety of the residents in the community. And therefore cities have discretion to impose certain restrictions on how property is used, under what circumstances, so on and so forth. So as the city has grown here in recent years, oops, there we go. In recent years, the issue has come up with regard to the construction of 2-family structures, duplexes, twin homes, etc. That conversation tends to revolve around what percentage of Lots are going to be dedicated to two-family structures, what percentage are going to be dedicated to single-family homes. There's been significant discussion about the nature and quality of the construction, the aesthetics of the duplexes and twin homes, facade coverings, etc. So what we have done is we've drafted a resolution that would apply to all zoning districts that allow for two-family structures, hence the reason why it would apply to R2, R3, and R4. That would effectively implement what staff believes are the concerns of the governing body. This would only apply to newer developments going forward. Existing developments that have already been rezoned would not be covered by this. They would be grandfathered in. Highlights, you will see in the agenda packet at G1A is a copy of the resolution and declaration that would be applied and insisted upon from developers when they come forward and apply for rezoning. It would seek to mitigate sound transfers between units by requiring additional sound buffering, construction materials, also increase aesthetic appeal of structures, diversifying the look and appearance so that you don't have an entire community of monotonous cookie cutter looking houses, just door after door after door. City staff has spoken with a number of developers and home builders. The reception has been relatively positive. I think they believe that this is a reasonable approach to some of the concerns that have been raised by the governing body and the residents in the past. But let's be transparent that increasing the quality of the construction, increasing some of the requirements that go into these properties may have an offsetting increase in the cost of construction, which could result in an increase in rental rates associated with these properties. There we go. So, City Council, Planning Commission, you have before you a proposed resolution to consider and discuss that would effectively control certain variables associated with two-family structures, percentages allowed for proposed development, as well as construction requirements, aesthetic requirements for neighborhood amenities as well. And then I will let Micah talk in a little bit more depth about the specifics of the restrictive covenant that is being proposed. This is something that, as part of the rezoning process, that the developer would be required to agree to as part of that process. It would not guarantee approval. It would simply be one condition that would have to be agreed to as part of that approval process. The Planning Commission, the governing body, you've gone through the process before where a rezoning application has been brought before you. Micah does a fantastic job of going through the plethora of different factors that you have to consider in evaluating the totality of the circumstances to determine whether that rezoning is appropriate and in the best interest of the community. You still have to go through that process. Developer agreeing to implement a restrictive covenant as part of this process is not the silver bullet. It doesn't guarantee passage. You still have to go through that analysis and consider, hey, does this still make sense? Is this still an appropriate use of the property? What impact, if any, is this going to have on neighboring areas? Is it consistent with how adjacent properties are being used in this area? Is it consistent with the general welfare, health, safety of the residents? And so this is only one piece of that analysis, and it doesn't excuse you from going through all of the different factors that the law requires in considering whether to approve or deny a rezoning application. So I want to be clear that just because a developer agrees to implement a restrictive covenant, that's not the end of the analysis. You could still go through the analysis and ultimately decide, you know what, I still don't think this makes a whole lot of sense. And so we're not going to approve it. Or it could be a situation where a developer says, I don't know that I want to agree to this. You're still going to have to go through the factors. But you do have the right to require as a condition for approval that they enter into this restrictive covenant. Okay? But it doesn't excuse you from going through the process. Because what we can't do is, we can't do what is called contract zoning. Meaning that somebody agrees to the restrictive covenant and that's the be-all end-all. That's it. We're just going to forgive all of the other factors that we're required to take into consideration. No, can't do that. Can't contract away that legislative discretion that you all have to go through as part of your job as governing body. So I will turn it over to Micah to walk through some of the particulars of what is included. And then maybe when we get done, be happy to answer any questions that you all might have. So,
all right, so Ryan Peck just went into step one, which is basically the resolution that kind of outlines how we can adopt the restrictive covenant. As he mentioned, it doesn't waive your quasi-judicial rights. So we're going to step now into part two, which kind of outlines what that restrictive covenant would entail. So one part of it would be a non-monotony standard. And I tried to mock up what that would look like, but basically the italicized on the right identifies non-monotony as being 6 different types of duplexes, and no 2 that are the same type could be side by side, and at least we would want to have them at least 5 types away. So for example, I color coded it, but I also wanted to be clear that I put a road where I'm thinking the non-monotony could occur, because it'd be very difficult for me to say that you can have non-monotony going in every certain direction, because then if I'm going 5 away in all possible directions, at some point there's going to be an overlap. So I'm saying the non-monotony, which I believe is the intent, would be on the road side. When you're driving into it, you want to have non-monotony. But if there's 2 that have a shared backyard that are the same type, I believe that would be considered acceptable. And Craig, feel free to jump in at any time. I do want to thank the city manager, Craig. He really worked hard on this and pulling different aspects of design standards from different cities and putting it together to try to think what was best appropriate for what city council and planning commission thought would be reasonable. But as you can see, we're going to have, before you go from one purple to the next purple, you're going to have 5 different standards in between, and then it would repeat itself, and 5 different standards in between, and then it would repeat itself. And so that's why we thought we could break up that sort of the same cookie cutter type where you just look down the street and you just see the same garage, the same roof pitch, the same facade, and it is just that kind of redundancy. Feel free to, if you guys have questions, feel free to interrupt at any time. The clicker is not the best right now. Dan, can you advance?
Yeah.
Thank you. We've talked about percentages before, so this one we dive back into it. But the developer covenants that the 2-family structure shall comprise no more than 40%, and that would be 40% of the structures. And so we're not talking about units, but 40%. So in this case, you have 10 lots here. You see the orange are duplexes, and the yellow are single family. So you'd have 40% of structures. So this here would be 8 units, this is 6 units. This is still 40% of structures. 1 duplex is 1 structure, not 2 structures. So we're saying that's 1 structure, so 40%. That's what we believe we've heard a lot of, and we think that kind of rings true, generally speaking, across the board. Where
that's where Trails End developed.
Trails End, yeah, so we definitely talked about Trails End when that came up, that whole 40% standard. We included in the restrictive covenants with Trails End that they won't exceed 80 duplexes or 40%, whichever is less. And so they went up to 212, and they replatted, they added additional lots, and the concern was, of course, if you add additional lots, does that mean you can add additional duplexes? And so we said, no more than 80, so we capped it there on that particular restrictive covenant for that one. But yes, you're right, that is where that conversation of 40 to 60, is it 60 units, is it 40 units, is it how many structures, and where we split the lot, we're saying a structure, and that includes a twin home, so, or a duplex, one structure. So we also want to include in the covenants and the provisions certain amenities. And those amenities will be 3 types, but they can include, but are not limited to, walking trails, parks, but definitely needs to include at least one active amenity. And an active amenity means something that you can kind of participate with outside. Something that's more aesthetic in terms, not aesthetic, but sort of more active in terms of walking around or engaging in like pickleball, basketball courts, volleyball, something of that nature. So we are saying that if you are going to introduce this type of development, we want it to have a neighborhood feel, we want there to be neighborhood amenities. The question did come up about neighborhood parks and public parks, and I just want to make that clear that that question did come up, and we want to keep it open for City Council and Planning Commission to discuss that, because if we say that it's a neighborhood park, technically that's a private park. That's not open to the public. So if we're saying you must commit to a neighborhood park, that's an exclusive park. If we change language and say you must commit to a public park, well then the city, it's open to everybody, but then the city has to maintain it. So that is a question that's kind of open for everybody here, if neighborhood versus public park. So,
Mike, you might mention how it's currently written.
yes, I believe it's currently written as a neighborhood park. Is that correct?
Open to the public is how it's currently.
Yeah, so a neighborhood park that's open to the public. And there is some questions, I think there was a concern raised by one developer in particular about, hey, this is a neighborhood park that are being paid for with HOA dues, but you're saying it has to be open to the public. How's that fair to my, future home buyers, So that question came up before. If it's a neighborhood park, we're saying, no, it must be exclusive, or sorry, it can't be exclusive, it has to be open to the public. How's that fair to people who are paying HOA dues if anybody can come in? So that question has come up before.
Can the pond be considered an amenity? You say they stock a pond?
If it had a walking trail, I believe then we could say it's an active amenity at that point. But they would have to have that walking trail. I think Pine Valley Statesman, for example, has a walking trail on one of the reserve ponds. We would consider that an active amenity.
I think he's saying if they stocked it with fish and they could fish at this pond.
That would, I think we would want to leave it up to the discretion of the city at that point, if we want to consider that an active amenity. They would probably have to put in a dock or something to the effect that actually say, this is, just simply stocking it with fish and being like, we're done. Maybe there would actually have to be some element of it that would require it. Active amenity means any man-made recreational facility or improvement located within a park, open space, tract, or common area that is intended for active physical use by residents. The term includes without limitation a swim pool, playground, splash pad, sport court, gym, dog park, or similar facility approved by the city. The term does not include passive. Primary decorative features such as benches, picnic tables, shade structures, landscaping, fountains, monuments, or open lawn areas not specifically improved or intended for active recreational use. So it doesn't necessarily say anything about fishing.
No, I mean, I think it would depend on the circumstances and the intended use of it. And, if it's a pond that existed before the development, that's probably not a man-made recreational facility. If it's something that was put in, if it's something that is intended to be used for fishing or for some other recreational purpose, it might, qualify under the definition of an active amenity. So,
And I guess that's where I'm getting at. I think St. Andrews, we've got 2 ponds and in the grassy area. I mean, the ponds are they're not there to fish. I mean, they weren't there. The purpose of them isn't for fishing. The purpose of them is for storm drainage, but they've got fish in them. And so if I was developing a neighborhood just like that, I could say, well, I've got 2 ponds and I've got a grassy area. Does that meet it? To me, that doesn't seem to meet the intent of what you're going for here, but could somebody say that? And if they did, when you say the city is the one that decides, who is that? Is that the...
It'd probably be me and Ryan Peck, going like, I don't know about this.
I generally agree with you based on the description that you've given. I'm not sure that would meet the definition of an active amenity. I mean, if the pond was created for purposes of storm drainage, and it wasn't created for purposes of recreation, and the recreation is just an offshoot of it, then I think the stronger side of that argument is, no, that doesn't count.
So can we just put it in there that it has to be a recreational
But-
I mean, I
pond?
think the challenge there though is the homeowners association pays for the fish, I mean, they don't just
Sure.
show up.
But
So
you
they have
don't-
intended to make it fishable.
So is there requirements that they would have to meet then?
The difficulty, I mean, the balancing act here is you intentionally want this to be a broad definition, to grant wide latitude to developers to decide, hey, what kind of active amenities do we want to incorporate into our development? And there may be ideas that come forward that none of us sitting here today could ever envision. And you want that broad definition to be flexible over time. And the more we rein that in, the more specific we get, the less discretion the city and the developers are gonna have in terms of figuring out what kind of active amenities. So, I mean, we could rein it in and restrict certain things. You know, say that, you know, a pond under those circumstances wouldn't qualify. But I think a lot of it depends on the circumstances at the time and what was the intent and how is it being used for purposes of recreation. Was it man-made? Did it exist before? You know, it's a lot of what ifs.
I think it's worth being just a little careful with that one, because my hesitation, I think might be yours as well, is that if we leave that as a gray area, every developer's gonna see the bottom dollar and think, well, it's gonna cost me next to nothing to throw a couple docks in and some fish in there, and yeah, the HOA is maintaining it, but then we're gonna have a whole bunch of developments with fishing ponds and no parks or any other
Yeah, well,
amenities.
I mean, the neighborhoods in our area, there's more people fishing than at any park that exists, so, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
valid,
Yeah,
Yeah.
before, so Craig, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I think I would qualify it, should it have a trail around it, then to me, it becomes, an active amenity, and maybe we can clear that up with a little more verbiage.
And we can have more discussion, I mean, I'm not opposed to the open-endedness as Ryan stated, you know, and we're gonna talk more about it, so.
That was my question, if it's gonna be called an amenity, who's gonna pay for the walking trail around the pond?
The HOA would,
The HOA will?
it would be converted to them once a certain number of lots are sold.
Or the developer, then.
Developer than the HOA. But I kinda wonder about this myself, because you got these detention ponds out here that people are using as a recreation area, the HOA is paying to maintain them, paying to stock them and stuff, so I could see how that could easily be interpreted or qualified as an amenity. If that's not the intention of the council and the planning commission, then, we could specifically notate in there that detention ponds utilized for fishing don't qualify, or we could qualify them by requiring something additional to the detention pond,
Sure.
such as a walking trail.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want it to be something that we'd have to track perpetually, like if the pond is stocked, then it's an amenity, we're not gonna be watching these years down the road. So it's a question of, do we need to add something like a trail to it to qualify it upon, or do we wanna just decide that ponds don't count towards that count of 3?
I mean, you know, from my perspective, as long as that's public access, you know, on any given next weekend, there's anywhere from 6 to a dozen, you know, 12 to 15-year-olds standing at the pond fishing along with their, you know, their parents and other people, at least between the two neighborhoods I see a lot of time. I think it'd be a shame to disqualify it and discourage the use of it, so that's my opinion.
But if it becomes public, you have to have a fishing license to fish on it.
It wouldn't, not in the neighborhood, it's still private.
well, and I would
It's under 15
agree with the fact
Yeah.
that if they're paying for it, I'm not sure that it would be fair to be open to the public. But if the city in any way is funding towards said amenities, then it should be open to the public, but if it's not, I can see why the HOA is maintaining it, they should be the ones able to utilize it.
We do not plan to fund it, and that's one of the questions we want to get answered tonight. Tonight is review and comment, adoption, if the city council wishes, would be on the 18th. We want to know if you guys would like these amenities to be HOA, like many of our neighborhoods are, or open to the public, which is how it's currently written.
So, real quick, I lost track, are we arguing whether or not the pond, if it's stocked or whatnot, is be considered an amenity at all, or an active amenity? Because the requirement is 3 amenities, 1 being active.
I believe we're discussing whether it would be active.
So to me, I kind of agree with Craig's point, we could count it alone as an amenity, but to make it active, you
You
put
have
the
to
trail
walk
around.
around
And
Yeah.
in the definition for active is trails. So you just put a trail around it. Seems like
Yeah.
it's got coverage already as written.
Cause if it's just a pond, I mean, almost every neighborhood is
It's
going to
gonna
have a
have a
pond,
pond.
and so if a pond is an active amenity, then you might as well not even
And
have
you
an
need
active
two.
amenity, because they're all
If you're
gonna
gonna
have
pull-
it, and it's,
Right.
that's, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we
They're
don't,
gonna have a pond,
it
they're not
shouldn't
gonna
dilute.
have to stock them.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
they would have to be,
they're going, I mean, how many ponds around here don't have fish in them, do any of them not have?
I understand, I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
So do we need to decide that now, or we have to, I mean, are we?
No, there's no decision now. I
Well,
mean, we can keep moving on and, or if
Do
you
we
guys
come
want.
back around to the edits we wanna make, or do we wanna make the edits as we go along?
Either way, this is all being recorded, so we'll take it into account when we move forward, or if you guys wanna hash it out a little bit more, you can, or, I mean, there's a lot to go through, especially for you guys on your end. So either we can talk about changing it now, if you guys are all in agreement with it, or we can do what we believe we heard and make some edits, or,
Well, let's try this, I think if everyone agrees, as long as there's a trail present around the lake, they call it active, and if not, it's just an amenity. Was
I
that
agree with that,
consensus?
yes.
That would work.
Second question we wanna know is public or HOA/developer. That, to me, that may be more important.
Her personal opinion is, you really, I mean, how are you gonna make it private? They can post signs, you know, I think in some of the, in the Seasons neighborhood there, the pond along 183rd says private, but
Everybody fishes there.
you park at the church and walk across the street, no one wants to see your driver's license, so I don't think we advertise it as public, I think we just allow it to be what it is. Personal
But
opinion.
then the city has to pay to maintain.
Not if it's not advertised as public, if it's part of the neighborhood and I drive up and fish, if someone questions me, I go home, if not,
Besides
HOA
fish
still,
catching
right.
release too.
But it's still someone, either private or whether we
Well,
advertise
I think
or not,
we're
it's
marking
still-
it as
yeah.
private,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to your point, I mean, it's not on us to navigate.
And I think we let the
Monitoring
neighbor-
that
we
would
let the
be-
neighborhoods take care of it.
But what about other active amenities? What about a swimming pool?
Well,
You can easily put up a fence around a swimming pool, lock it, secure it, only to the residents of the neighborhood. I mean, I think one of the policy decisions that you as a group have to decide is, do you want these active amenities that are basically made available or dedicated to the general public, even if they're being funded and maintained by the HOA? I mean, that's a policy decision that you all are gonna have to make. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, I think we, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was
I-
just- go ahead.
If we mark it as private, which I think is what we should do, I think that's a very gray area, because to your point, like, if it's a park then, we're not fencing off a park until they have to have a code, but if it's a pool, they're fencing it off, and they're putting a code on it. And so I think what we're saying is that it needs to be private, but it is not going to be on the city to police that and have officers going by to make sure that everybody that's there is monitoring that. It just is what it is, and if the HOA wants to put somebody in place for that, that's also on them.
It'd certainly be more traditional to allow these to be the HOAs, not.
And I think that's what I think that's the way it needs to be remain.
And
I
the
think
trade-off
we-
there is that, you know, some of these HOAs are going to restrict use
And I think
to
that's.
some or all of these facilities to only their residents and the people who are footing the bill for it.
Can we defer this to the HOA? Can we let them decide how they
I
want
mean, I think if
it
they put a
set up?
fence up and put a gate on it with a code,
That's fair, yeah.
That's their
that's
decision.
their money to
Decision to do
spend.
that.
If they wanna leave fishing open to the public and not fence it in, great.
Yeah,
Here's-
can we
here's-
defer to them?
We'll take that out then.
So, cause as written, the last line says, no fence, gate, or other obstruction limiting public shall be erected on dedicated parcel without city consent.
We can take that out if we're gonna go in the more traditional route.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is because we're requiring one active amenity, and the pool is an active amenity. I don't think you ever can build a pool and not have a
I was
fence
just
around
thinking,
it.
right, you have to.
So then it no longer counts as their one amenity, so they would need another amenity,
You
right?
can have a pool with a fence, but you don't have to lock it.
But I
But I
would
think we-
say,
You would still need to lock it or have some control so kids don't just come in.
even if it's unlocked during
right?
the day, but I would say,
Unless you have a lifeguard on duty, you can't leave it unlocked.
to a funds point, if we required everything to be open to the public, and let's say an HOA built a pool, and we were like, you have to leave that open to the public, how many families are gonna go to the City of Goddard pool and pay to get in, when they can just go over to the new HOA and swim in their pool for free?
Arbor Creek has a private pool. The only people who can swim in that pool are the people who live in that neighborhood. they have access to that.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, but
That's
they
what they pay
also,
for.
but they also have a walking trail, they also have, you know, they have another amenity outside of that that people can walk around in the neighborhood, but they cannot attend the pool without some sort of, unless they live in there or they have a connection in there. So, it makes sense to me that the HOA would take on the responsibility of these amenities, and we leave it at that.
Unless there's an adamant disagreement, we can move forward. with
No,
that.
but I think we just need to remember that the intent of what we're trying to do is to create neighborhoods that allow for interaction, for people to get out and have a sense of community. And
And a good quality of life.
right, and somebody that lives off 167th Street isn't gonna take their kids over to, you know, to Arbor Creek unless there's a birthday party or something. But the intention of what we're trying to do is to make Goddard a nice place to live, and that people can enjoy, whether it's fishing, whether it's pickleball, whether it's a swimming pool or whatever, that there's places for living life right in their local neighborhood. And we've got a couple subdivisions, you know, a couple little things that were built without that. And so that is the intent, I think, of what we're trying to do, is that each area that gets developed as an area where there's a place for people to live life together.
So as I see it, there are two questions. Number one is, do you still want to require the active amenities within the neighborhoods? And number two is, if so, are those amenities accessible to the general public, or are you okay with allowing them to be used, be for the exclusive use of the members of the HOA? I see those as two separate issues. You can still require them to have the active amenities, but be okay with them being for the exclusive use of the HOA.
I think that's all right.
Yeah, please speak up if this isn't correct, but I believe the answer to your first question is yes.
Okay.
We want to require, and the answer to the second question is, we're gonna leave it up to the HOA. It's a private amenity, and they can lock it if they want to.
Yep.
Perfect. Is that clarify? Okay.
Yeah.
So the only thing I asked the group on that is, in an R1 situation, we're not requiring this community sense, are we? I mean, an R1 builder could come in and put in 300 houses with no park, with no path, with no.
No, they need a park.
It's not required in the. It's not required.
You guys can require that during the planning process, but it's not a requirement in our codes. This only pertains to R2, what we're discussing.
R2, and R4.
Right. So I just bring that up. You know, we're setting the standard here for these two-family style homes, but nothing for our R1.
Well, I think, my point of view is that we need to make that a part of this process. Because as we continue to grow, you know, when you go from 5,000 to 15,000, we want to have, if you're gonna have 300 houses and homes in a development, we're expecting that to be part of our community, and those amenities, I think, need to be a part of it. That's my position.
Okay. I just want to bring
That's
it
going
because I
forward,
was
that's
thinking
my,
about that.
yeah, that.
Here we are setting ourselves up with the, and maybe that generates some of the change we're after, but we don't require that in an R1 situation, so.
It should be required of some sort.
Yeah.
Comp plan, we can deal with that in the comp plan
Yeah.
process.
Michael, just before we leave this, I'm curious, where does the 1/2 acre size come into play? Like, where do we come up with that?
1/2 acre?
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
I'm just wondering why there's a size.
So I was looking at some areas where places said you had to dedicate a lot towards an amenity, and so I was looking at what the size of the lot is. It's an art, not a science, is my best answer to that. I don't know. If you guys think it's too big or too small, we can change it. Some developers, they may have a reserve where they're putting a pond, and they just happen to have a spare acre next to that reserve that they'd be able to use, so they're not having to sacrifice a lot. That's a lot of the pushback we'll get is, well, you're killing 2 of my lots. Those are $60,000 each, kind of thing. So I was trying to find what seemed like enough green space so people could go enjoy it versus not making the requirement so great that the project becomes where they won't do it, because it's not gonna give them the return they want.
That kind of leads to a question I had though. So this goes into its rezoning for an R2 or an R3 or an R4 deal. But what happens if you're a small developer?
Cause we've had things come before us for duplexes that were, one lot.
Right. Yep.
Is there a cap on that?
You
Like a
mentioned the
minimum?
conditional use, maybe that would be where it comes in.
Well, I know that's a good question, honestly. I mean, obviously, the best. So, I mean, you guys all know about Pine Street, right? We have one duplex on one really small lot on Pine Street. So how are they, that's clearly all this kind of breaks down if you're gonna rezone in that particular case. We do allow a conditional use permit for a duplex in an R1. So if you're in Pine Street, for example, you could pull a conditional use permit to build a duplex in an R1, and you don't need to go through this.
Not yet.
Not yet.
There probably would be a lot more big arm type of, or lion's den as they call it now, based on this.
But is there any reason why we could not add some verbiage that said minimum 10 lots, minimum 25 lots, where it makes sense to have these amenities?
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely consider that.
Actually,
The thing is-
Yeah, the only difficulty if you do that is our developer is going to game it, and instead of doing one big development, I'm going to do a series of developments with only 10 lots or 20 lots, wherever that threshold is. And so I think Micah's suggestion is if we set a default policy and then use a conditional permit process to address exceptions, yeah.
I mean, I guess I would ask the question, I mean, if they're gonna do that, they're gonna have to submit plans for each one of those sections of 10 or sections of 20. They're gonna have to pay money for that.
They would.
I mean, I would think we could set something that would prevent them from trying to do that and still let the single lot, the person that owns two single lots together or something along those lines proceed without having to pay for a conditional use permit and all the things that go along with it.
I mean, even if it's something that's like, if you have 5 to 10, you only have to have one amenity, or like tier it. I don't know if that's too
Wow.
much, but just kind of tiering.
And I don't know, Mr. Parks, what, do you see any, is like 3 lots very common? Is it usually a single lot or a lot of lots? That's my question. I'm gonna put it on the spot.
A lot of lots?
A lot of
But,
lots.
I mean, does three make sense? 3 or less doesn't require, cause that's
For what?
for an amenity, to require an amenity. I mean, how many lots are you seeing, like if you do a plan, or you see a plan? Not
That
that's
never
not
comes
easy.
into play. Yeah, yeah. We're 2 standard deviations away from reality, talking about these things, I think.
Yeah.
We're really pretty deep in the weeds when we start trying to dice this up with numbers of lots. I think we keep it pretty general.
Those worry about the 1.5 acre.
Yeah, but we'll let Micah decide and then bring it to the planning commission and.
Appreciate the courtesy.
Yeah.
If you guys have other ideas that you don't think of today, send it to us, and when the council takes it up on the 18th, and if it's something big, they may not be ready to approve that night, they can always table it to another one. But things like the size of the space, if a half acre doesn't seem right, or you think of a different size, let us know, and we'll bring that to you guys.
So a typical sidewalk is, I think, about 3 feet, 3-4 feet. And so we want to go 5 feet. So this is typical, you'll see it on a thoroughfare through the subdivision. It's typically not in a cul-de-sac, so we're keeping that, we're just increasing the width, basically, of the sidewalk. So any questions about that aspect of it? Sorry, Dan, if you advance.
Yep.
Back one. 2 trees per lot shall be required prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy. So that's pretty typical in a lot of restrictive covenants. We see this in a lot of developments, but the restrictive covenant will say, hey, you need to have 2 trees. So we're gonna say you need to have 2 trees before you get your certificate of occupancy. And so we basically are saying, hey, a tree caliber at 1.5 inches, we'll measure it 6 inches off the ground, and measure the diameter of the tree and say that this is in compliance. And so this is to kind of introduce new saplings and kind of bring in more greenery into these subdivisions. You know, they always say the best time to plant trees 20 years ago, next best time is now, and so we're hoping to try to bring that into play. We don't actually have a tree planting policy, so this is the closest thing we have to it right now. Is there any questions about this one?
Yeah, so this and most of the rest of these restrictions that I saw, all kind of, are all based on certificate of occupancy or the time of permitting or time of zoning.
Right.
You know, is there any, you know, but most of these neighborhoods, once they're built, are going to transition into an HOA covenant that governs the neighborhood for the rest of its life.
Right.
Can we require these to extend into that covenant? Like the 2 trees or the, you know, the playground, 10 years from now, that playground's gonna be falling apart, need repairs.
Require that in their restrictive covenant? Force the developer in their restrictive covenant, because they typically with an HOA, when they form an HOA with the developments, and then they draft a restrictive covenant to go with that.
Well, this would be a restricted covenant that is applied to the entire development. I mean, so to the extent that these same requirements are in the HOA covenant, I mean, it'd be duplicative of what's going to be in the existing restrictive covenant that's gonna run with the land, even after the developer sells the lots, turns it over to the HOA.
Well, like these these trees here is a good example. If the tree dies within 2 years of the issuance of certificate of occupancy, then it's got to be replaced. What if it dies 2.5 years? Based on this language now, there's no requirement that they replant it.
Right.
Again, but in most HOA covenants, you've got to have at least 2 trees, whether it's 2 years after the house is built or 20 years after the house is built.
Right.
So under those circumstances, the HOA would take the lead in enforcing their own requirements.
And if they don't have that, then they wouldn't have to have the trees anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
My only struggle here is, if I'm buying this duplex, what if I don't like their trees? When you're allowing the developer to pick a tree that may or may not be appealing. They're gonna put all the same tree in.
Sure.
Put your own tree in?
I'd rather pick my own.
I guess you could replace it, 1 for 1, or 2 for 2, with the own trees.
Mike, I know I always ask the question when I see the word lots. So if it's a twin home where the lots are split.
1 lot. 1 lot.
Well, twin home would be 2 lots, right?
No, because it'd still be, I mean, we're gonna say it's 1 lot,
One
you split down the
structure.
middle, you're allowed 2 trees. That doesn't mean now you have to have 4 trees.
So 2 trees per structure. is
Yeah,
what
sure,
you're
that's,
saying.
yeah.
Because your
2
word is
trees.
lot, and I'm just making sure we're consistent here.
Yeah, no, we're gonna say 2 trees per lot, and then we're gonna say 2 trees, but when it's split down the middle, we're still just gonna say it's 2 trees.
And then, okay, so follow-up question is, this applies to the 60% of the homes that are there too, not just the.
That's correct, yeah.
twin homes.
Yeah, so this covenant, as Ryan Peck mentioned, applies to the whole program, right? So it doesn't matter if you're being a single family or a duplex, you still have to put 2 trees.
Right.
Right.
And again,
The
if I'm
only-
buying
the
That's a
only-
good question, yeah.
If I'm buying a single family home, I don't want you putting the trees in, unless I get to pick them. And you're gonna keep me from moving in until that happens.
That's possible. I mean, we're gonna tell them that they have to put in 2 trees. If you guys think that's too prohibitive, we can strike that aspect of it, and just simply say that the HOA must decide 2 trees or something like
I
that.
think it needs to be left in there.
Do we have any
Don't like
neighboring
the tree pulled
communities
up
that
the
develop
plan.
that have
I won't have to dig them up.
any rules that are like, you have 60 days from the date of purchase of the home to plant trees, and then it kind of defers to, like, is there a way to maybe put it in that way? So it still falls on the fact that you have to have them, but you have 60 days from the date of closing on your home.
For one planting season, sometimes.
Yeah, like you have one planting, that's a good idea, like one planting season to plant 2 trees, but if they buy in December, you can plant them in the spring and be.
How do you
that
enforce
a
that or
thing?
monitor that? In if it's 2 trees before you get certificate of occupancy, that's something somebody has to check a box and say, okay, they've got their 2 trees.
And if
okay,
it's not
I can
being
grant it.
inspected, then you can't, I mean, sending somebody back out there. it's-
What I tend to see with HOAs is a requirement, you have a certain number of trees, or you have certain types of trees that you're required to maintain at all times. I mean, and it's not for a limited period of time. I mean, my neighborhood has some ridiculous requirements of certain number of trees, and 1 has to be an evergreen, and, 2 have to be, I don't even know.
But is this where it kind of falls into like what we talked about in council, where we can kind of defer that to developments coming before us? and look at the type of development going in and structure how many of each tree at that point? Or is this something that we have to give an overview of now and say, you can only have 6 of these trees on one road and 4 of these, or can we kind of break that down per development and kind of defer back to Micah on?
Well, the way that it is currently drafted, the tree requirement is a time limitation on the first 2 years.
Right.
I mean, to the extent a tree is removed after those 2 years, or it dies after those 2 years, there's nothing in the in this proposed declaration, restrictive covenant, that would require maintaining any number of trees per lot or per structure.
Well, I don't know if
You could
that's-
certainly put that in there if you want.
I don't think that's what anybody is arguing. I mean, that's a whole separate thing of its own that we don't need to go down the rabbit hole. But if you're saying the tree is kind of the challenge for you, can we defer to the fact that you have to have 2 trees, but maybe we do break it up so we're not getting 100 oak trees on one side of the road? Can we at least say that per development, we'll take a look at it, kind of like we talked about what we would require per development, like you're not gonna put a Italian house in 17 acres and vice versa. Like, is there a way to mitigate that at the time of the development when the developer brings it in front of you? Or can we just say you have to have a mix of X amount of trees and not say what you have to have, just saying?
I think we just want to keep it in general, like you have to have 2 trees. I think that to Chair Coyne's point of view, and if you're building a brand new house, the home builder is going to say, hey, I have to have 2 trees. What 2 trees do you want?
Right.
And they're going to ask you. If it's a spec home, they're probably just going to plant 2 trees.
Which is true.
Yeah, so that's probably what's going to happen. If it's a brand new house versus a spec home, they're going to say, hey, Joe homeowner, Jane homeowner, the city's forcing me, sorry, to put in 2 trees. What 2 trees do you want? They're gonna say, dwarf maple trees, and they're gonna go stick them in. If it's a spec home, they're gonna be like, okay, here's some evergreens, boom, and they're gonna be done, and they're gonna walk away. That's what they're gonna do to get their CFO.
Don't include any shrubs in there?
No, just trees.
Well, boxwoods everywhere.
What do you guys think about the trees?
I think we need to stay in. I mean, I think, like you said, if the builder's probably going to ask what kind of tree, if you want certain kind of trees, you can ask then. But it's nice to have trees. I mean,
I'd like to.
It's cheaper than 3.
Seasonal requirement 1 for
Okay, but we're joking over here,
They're
before we
required
just
2
make
plus
a
3
good,
bushes, so.
good point, like, can we just make sure that they're not going and buying the cheapest trees possible?
I would rather let them buy whatever trees they want.
Let's just say 2 trees, let's keep it simple.
Are you leaving?
The longer we talk, the harder we're making these. I don't wanna be the tree police.
Yes.
Do we wanna limit the period of the requirement? You wanna just, the lots have to maintain 2 trees? Do you wanna limit it to a 2-year period after rezoning, or after a certificate of occupancy? What's your pleasure?
Development starts, they start with 2 trees, we'll let it develop and go from there. Let's keep it simple and start. It's who's gonna enforce some of this stuff? It's like, I don't even know where I'm gonna this house. I love trees, they gotta.
I like the idea of 2 trees within the first planting season.
Danny, can you advance slides? Thank you. Alright guys, we're gonna jump into architectural standards. So I can see that Mr. Parks ran away immediately. So architectural standards for 2-family structures, once again, we pulled different standards, what we thought were reasonable to try to improve that sort of aesthetic appeal. One thing being masonry, 30%, kind of like you see on the front over here. Masonry shall go up about 30%. We try to avoid try to increase just that general aesthetic appeal. Vivid paint colors are limited, incidental accents. Porches, varied roof lines, varied facade depths shall be incorporated to create variety and individuality of dwelling units within the building. So we're trying to break up, once again, that monotony. We're trying to break up that whole sight line down the street, and you just see the garages, you just see that one solid wall of housing units. And so this is what the language we're trying to incorporate. And I've brought some examples up there. Of course, this doesn't mean this is exactly what it's going to look like. I'm just pulling examples that I've found online that say, hey, this is similar. Front windows must make at least 10%. Front walls, garage doors may not cover more than 50% of the front of the home. This ensures the garages do not visually dominate the front of the home. So you guys have seen these before. We have some of these in Otter Court currently, where the front door is actually on the side of the duplex and the garage is the prominent feature on the front. We're trying to avoid that and try to have something that's a little more aesthetically pleasing, where it looks like it's more in tune with the urban fabric of a traditional subdivision.
This isn't required on any single family. I mean, we're creating restrictions here that are gonna be tough.
Yeah, this is all gonna be for duplexes.
I know, but I mean, we're creating restrictions. We're not creating the same restrictions on R1, so, I mean, to me, these are getting in the weeds.
Well, I was curious too.
Facade changes, you know, percentage of windows, I mean,
I was also curious on the 50% garage door. I don't know if any house in Seasons even has that, because they have small, little porch and window and then a big garage. So
yeah.
I just wonder if 50% is the right number, because all your single family homes in that neighborhood are gonna have to be like wider.
I mean, you're already requiring 6 different types, or proposing 6 different types. And now we're gonna tell them how many windows they have to have and what size the garage can be and
sure.
how many trees they have to plant.
Yeah, we drafted this to try to, a wide draft, so we're trying to include as many architectural and design standards as possible, but if you guys see stuff that you don't like, and you're like, we feel like this is overreach on the part of the city, then feel free to say that, we can try to.
We're basically creating an HOA across the entire city.
I just want to go on record.
You don't have to raise your hand.
Well, everybody talks. I just want to go on record by saying I agree with what he's saying. I do think that if you're putting this restriction on your R2, R3 zone force, we should consider some of the same kind of things for R1. I do think we're getting a little bit too much. I get what you're trying to do, and I like what you're trying to do. I agree with most of it, but I do think we're getting a little carried away.
Is there a middle ground then?
Well, they did away with it. Trying to make the lot smaller, the house is bigger, and the side yard is smaller. And then make the actual property bigger, and you put a front door on the side. Where's the happy medium?
Yeah, that's what city staff's trying to figure out between the 12 of you guys. We're trying to eke it out of you and make some kind of amalgamation that can be put into practice. And that's what we're trying to get today.
I think it's a problem of perception. I mean, there's a demand for duplexes in multifamily housing, but then people hear the word duplex and they get nervous about homeowner values and community value and what it's going to do to the community. So I think if I understand correctly, the intent of this is try to give everybody a comfort level that yes, there are duplexes coming, but it's not just going to be row houses or something, some kind of cheap structure put up. It's got standards, so they're duplexes, but they're nice duplexes, and this is our way to enforce it, right?
I think that was my position initially, because we already have a lot of poorly structured, I mean, we can drive around our city and see clearly that there are some very poorly structured duplexes in our community, and we still have slated to be built from the previous at 167th and 23rd Street. Those have no design standards to my knowledge, and the ones that are slated for Maple and 199th also, there are no design standards, or have not been any design standards up until this point in terms of aesthetically pleasing. As a person who grew up in military housing, I know what it looks like, and it looks like what we're seeing all around us. And military housing is not designed for people to come and live and stay. It's designed for people to come and live for a little bit of time and then move on. And I think what we're trying to, or what I'm trying to, one voice, try to encourage going forward is an aesthetic that invites people, whether you live in a duplex or a twin home or a single family home, that it's a place that you want to come and live and have quality of life and have park, you know, or walking amenities, those kinds of things. Instead of every single house looking exactly the same, being able to hear your neighbor next door. These are not acceptable living conditions in my opinion. So I think if there's a way for us to find some middle ground in some of these aesthetics, then we don't have to sit here and do these kinds of things.
I'd second that. I think we had a council meeting this last year. It was actually before I was seated, but I was a little nervous for it. A lot of the community came. They were voting on another set of duplexes, and I was very shocked to hear that it wasn't that I think most of our community is against duplexes. They're against the quality of duplexes we've been giving them. And so I think that's kind of where some of this comes from. I don't disagree in the fact that maybe we're structuring it a little too harshly. So I'm not opposed to a middle ground. I just don't want to see what we're seeing go up continue to go up, because I think it looks poorly on us. It's hard to live in, and it's not the standard that I want to set for the people that we want to bring to Goddard or keep in Goddard.
It's a starting point, and these ideas are not just ones that came up with out of my head. These are from other communities.
Done very good research.
I didn't just make them up. Like the garage composition of the windows and stuff, we pulled that from other communities in the state of Kansas that are requiring these same standards of R2 structures. Not so much in the Wichita area, however, Micah's colleagues and my colleagues have been meeting on a monthly basis in different cities. Several of the development community and the consultant engineers they work with can attest to this, having this same conversation and discussing these same design standards. Derby, I mean, you guys read Eagle you probably saw that they just had a charrette with their planning department. Some of the stuff we took from them. So if any of it feels like overkill, we're here to compromise. This was a starting point. We took everything we're seeing from the other communities, the 12 of you, what we're hearing from our community members, and tried to put it together into something. We talked to the builders and developers that have done two-family buildings in our market, and the feedback has actually been surprisingly positive with this. I was pleasantly surprised. So my anticipation is that if we get some version of this passed in the next couple of council meetings, we've already got developers that are waiting to buy land and intend to apply for R2, and they've all seen this. We've sent them drafts of it just like we have you all, and like I said, so far, sounds like they're gonna work to move towards projects, and they're sharing these with their builders too. So whatever you guys think, if something in this needs to be taken out because it's too much, here we are to discuss it.
They can ensure serving developers as well for Goddard.
Well, yeah, and they just want a guidepost too, because for the last 3 years plus, you know, people are investing significant time and money into the entitlement process with the engineering firms, and then if we're just kind of the goalpost seems to be perpetually moving, that's an issue and does not look good on us. It makes it a difficult place to invest in. So we want to get something that can be uniformly applied for the R2 zoning district. So the development community, the investment community, everyone that wants to be in Goddard knows what the rules are.
I don't think there's anything wrong with setting a standard. So, I mean, we don't have to micromanage every single detail, but we do, I do think we have a responsibility to build something that people want to come and live in and stay in for a while. And they shouldn't have to hear their neighbor next door.
And I share about being concerned or being overly restrictive, but if the developers, the ones we're restricting, are okay with it, then I would think then that's probably not overly restricted. I mean, if we were being overly restricted, that's the feedback Craig would have gotten, and it'd probably be different. But the fact that they're okay with it, to me, makes me think it's probably close to where it needs to be.
Sorry, back. Protective entry courts, common vestibules, covered breezeways, or enclosed stair halls shall be incorporated to reduce the number of visible doors, unless the structure is designed in a row house or townhouse manner oriented toward the street. And so I had to actually look at vestibule because I didn't know what that was. So that's a vestibule. But covered breezeways, we kind of figured out what that was. But this just kind of adds a little more architectural standards that people can utilize for, you know, it's like I said, once again, it's an aesthetic element. Next. Side rear elevations, garages, carports, and all accessory structures shall reflect the same level of design, aesthetic quality, and architectural detailing as a primary structure. Freestanding garages and carport structures shall be designed to be integral with the building, or site has to avoid long monotonous rows of garage doors, building walls, etc. So this is a picture that I pulled from online, but it kind of, I feel like, ties into that, where it's going to match the principal structure. So a detached garage is considered accessory. I will say we've highlighted accessory on here. There's sheds. I don't think I would say a shed has to have masonry around it. You know, technically a shed can be an accessory structure, but I think predominantly we're talking about detached garages. So, and then the sound separation requirement. So that was a big thing that came up before. We have pulled some construction standards that we thought were reasonable, that a builder would not object to, and I spoke with a couple builders about these standards, and they didn't feel like it was unreasonable. But basically, we would ask and we would adopt this into our construction code, that we would go a little bit above and beyond what the IRC would require, and say that we're going to add some supplemental design standards that says that you have to do this to mitigate sound at a much greater level than the IRC requires. So that would be something that we would include. Questions related to that?
I guess I have a question on it. Is there any type of sound deadening insulation that can be used? Is that in another form of equivalent?
Yeah, if they can show or prove that it's sound dampening, then we could say potentially that we could approve it based on that. If there's other standards of construction material out there that actually shows to be sound dampening, it's proven to be sound dampening, I think that we could take that into consideration. It has to be a common practice though. If you're gonna say I'm gonna stuff the walls full of duct tape, probably not, right? You'd have to say, no, this is a common construction material that's widely utilized, it's, you know, common practice. We would run it through our building inspector, look at the IRC, see what else there is, talk with different people, and then say, yeah, that's an acceptable material. We're not gonna let you use any type of sound dampening and stuff it full of Beanie Babies and call it a day. No, it's gotta be really just.
There's another thing that's like, is it firewalls that they can put in between?
Say that again?
Firewalls?
It's a.
There's like, but there's a specific.
1 hour fire rating?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So
that
once
not
again,
considered?
I have to kind of really disqualify myself from making any type of construction, especially with the present company. I am not, nor have I ever done construction, so I don't know, but we are actively looking at that.
I mean, with that, you know, usually walls have like an SCC rating. Would we look at like assigning it's gotta have a certain, or is
Once
it
again,
just
we'd have to
the
look
building
at that.
inspector? Like,
Yeah, we're actively hiring a building inspector now. They're going, some of them already have their ICC certifications. We can go into that in more depth about how that would tie into the IRC and all the other ICC codes. But once again, I couldn't tell you that. I'm not qualified.
I'm curious too, on the continuous separation wall, does that include any attic, basement, or?
I don't think it does. Now, I'm just gonna talk about that just because when I pulled it from the ICC, I read that, it doesn't look like that a 1 hour fire rated wall goes all the way up into the attic, nor does it go down into the basement either. But I can't, once again, I'm not qualified to make an IRC full statement like that. So having read that recently, I don't remember it actually going all the way up there.
I only ask that because I've had duplex neighbors where the smoke from one comes into the other, so like smoke like cigarette smoke, but not like a fire.
I think that just opens up the issue of what do you have to do to the attics then, like that's a whole
Right.
separate.
I'm surprised the firewall doesn't have to do that.
Dan, can you advance the slide? So if the resolution is adopted as a subdivision regulation, this is a question that came up before. Amendment will need to be published first, incurring a small cost. The resolution was drafted and approved by Ryan Peck, the city attorney. Advance one more time, Danny. So it is recommended City Council and the Planning Commission deliberate and direct staff accordingly. We're asking no action be taken at this time. Are there any questions for Ryan Peck or myself at this time?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Section 2 talked about the 40%, and then section 12 talked about how the phasing would occur, and I couldn't figure it out.
So phasing, so let's say a development has got, let's say it's 100 acres or whatever. They'll do it in phases. They'll do phase 1, phase 2, based on what they think they can tolerate. So the way the phasing is written is that phase 1, let's say out of 100 acres, you're only doing a portion like 20 acres. That 20 acres has to still be 60-40. And when you go to the next phase, it has to be 60-40, and the next phase 60-40. That prohibits a developer from putting all the duplexes up front and then maybe waiting some time before they actually do more of the single family. And so we're saying, hey, if you're gonna do one phase and future phases down the road, we would, instead of front loading all the duplexes, you have to have a mix of single family and duplexes on each phase.
Prevents them from building all duplexes and walking away too, if they had.
Yeah.
Which that's the current situation, right, with the ones that are platted, because they're building all the duplexes first and then building the single family homes.
We didn't have that issue with Trail then, the other ones are to be determined.
I hate to beat that dead horse, just thinking from a builder perspective, and I'm like totally, I think we're on the same page with these duplexes and what that looks like, but just from a builder perspective, or even a buyer's perspective, generally speaking, like, there's development going in Lawrence, and so like the thought is they put their twin homes kind of at the front, right? But then you get slab homes and that entire slab home community is behind it, and then behind it is like your custom multi-million-dollar homes. And so have we looked at other communities and what that looks like if we require them to mix those?
No. Every place does it different. Some places want the single family on the outside and the duplex.
Well, I don't care which one you put on the outside, and I agree, because I don't want that to happen. I don't want them to put their duplexes up and then sit for 5 years even and say, we'll get to it when we get to it. Like, we wanna make sure they do it. I just thought from a design standard, is that standard?
Well,
We don't dictate that.
correct me if I'm wrong, but they could always put the single family homes first, right? There's no, they just can't build duplexes, too many first.
That's right.
So I had another question on that then too, though. When, I haven't been in a lot of when they first look at the phases and how they're set up, but is there any limitation to where they couldn't have, say the 20 acres, they couldn't split it with 2 separate entrances and have duplexes on one entrance and single families on another?
They could do that. We wouldn't prohibit that.
Okay, similar to like Cloverleaf,
Yeah,
like a
we wouldn't say that.
separate
We couldn't
road.
do that.
You just have to work those both in the same phase.
Yeah, that's the thing, is if that phase was one entrance and it was only 20 lots, then you're limiting what you can do, obviously. But if you
Right.
have 2 entrances on one phase, it just depends on the phase.
Yeah.
really.
So
Some
they
people, they'll
design-
do one phase, it'll be 100 lots, and another person in a phase will only be 20 lots. So it really just kind of depends.
So if they have 500 lots, you don't care if they put their duplexes in the back at first and the homes in the front, as long as they're following the 60/20.
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
60/40.
and think about where the
yeah.
utility infrastructure is going into, they're not gonna, they gotta connect in different
Right.
places, it'd probably be unlikely, unless there's some weird.
I just wanna make
reason
sure
why
that
it'd be
we're
economical.
allowing them to phase, but also being mindful that they can't just throw up their duplexes and walk away.
That each phase would have to be designed that way too, because you're gonna have multiple service lines for a duplex versus a single service line for a single family, so they'd have to engineer all that in advance. And another aspect too, is the design, the 6 monotonous standards, like we would have to almost pre-design where those duplexes are gonna go in advance, so that we make sure that they're not hitting that monotony standard. So it's a lot, it definitely, I understand the concern, it definitely requires more from staff to manage the development, to make sure that all these policies are being implemented effectively, so that is definitely true.
Not to turn this into a marathon discussion, I was wondering if we could maybe give, 5 to 10 minutes, any of you developers or people in here that would like to maybe, you have some comments or thoughts or ideas, maybe give you a couple minutes each to give us some feedback at this point, because I see varying body languages and frowns and smiling faces and things. In all seriousness, I mean,
If you want to, you're welcome to come up, first and last name, just, unless you want to remain anonymous, but I know we're calling you out. But is there anybody who wants to come up and speak on the matter?
You don't even have to go up there, just talk to them for a minute. I know you guys aren't all that shy.
Some are probably waiting patiently for their agenda item.
That, me too, but that's fine. I mean,
I
I
think
said we
that-
never give you an opportunity.
I think something to keep in mind is, over the last several years, as additional developments have come forward and come online, and, there's been a lot of discussion, about duplexes and twin homes. So there've been concerns raised, and so this is staff's attempt to address some of those concerns that have been raised, while at the same time keeping the city open for development. And so, that's what we're trying to do here. And it is a bit of a middle ground approach. And trying to keep the city open for development by also recognizing that there are legitimate concerns. And how can we address those concerns within reason?
Because we don't live in a vacuum, and I don't think you guys get the kind of feedback in the community that we do. Whether it's on Facebook or walking in the post office or just within the community. So there are concerns that people have lived here their whole lives. Some of them don't necessarily like the fact that it's grown. You can't stop that. But I think hearing some of the things from people that live in some of the newly built duplexes and buildings, you hear stories that relate to quality issues and problems that people have, and they sometimes even come in and talk to Mike and the staff. So, we're just trying to do what we can to make sure that we have a good quality of life, and Goddard develops in a rational and the soundest way as we can make it. And I think we all have the same intent, but it's a juggling act and a balancing act. And so we're all, the 12 of us, so right now we're doing some jugglings.
The straw broke the camel's back when the 3 fastest growing communities in Sedgwick County all denied an R2 zoning request in the same month, and that was October of last year. And I remember because I was at a city managers conference with other managers watching videos of their planning commission and council meetings, and that happened. And it's been since then that we've all been meeting on a monthly basis, trying to figure out what this looks like. And I think it's gonna be those 3 communities that are kind of setting the tone and as to what's gonna be allowed. And all of our standards that we're looking at are pretty similar. So, and maybe it does slow down with at least some of the development. Some of the development maybe a few of us wouldn't like to see here. Give more of an opportunity to the rural areas to get some of that stuff. I don't know, that could be something that, an unintended consequence. I just don't see it because the conversations we've had the last few weeks, developers who are literally waiting on this to pass so they can close on land and apply for their zoning amendment. I am slightly skeptical that they read this word for word like everyone else has, but from what we've been told, it's palatable.
Well, and I'm guessing pretty unlikely, but we're working on this comprehensive plan, so let's say we get through this comprehensive plan and they're like, hey, this is not what we're seeing in other communities, like maybe we need to take a shift again, then we come back to the table and take a shift. But I can't imagine, and kind of echoing Crystal one voice here, but I can't imagine us approving more duplexes without some form of standard in place that is more than what we have now. And I think that developers see that, and they want to be developing and they want to be building homes in our community. And so I think if we could put something out for them, and if we have to come back to the table in a year, then we have to come back to the table in a year.
I feel like the standards that you put in place could make these something that Goddard could be proud of, and not be something that's negatively thought about. Put up something nice and people aren't gonna complain about it. So,
We want the
Greg, I think you've done a great
landscape.
job putting this together.
Thank you. The whole team has worked really hard on them, so.
Appreciate it.
Any final comments before we go to G2? Alrighty. So this is the site plan for Paradise Corner. So Yeah, you can advance the slide.
Yes.
It's just not working. SPT Architecture has submitted a site plan application for a strip center located on the southeast corner of Main Street, US 54. Buildings around 19,000 square feet will have direct access to Main Street. Strip centers are considered commercial, and all commercial structures need to have a site plan approved by the planning commission, followed by architecture and engineering review by ABC prior to a building permit being pulled. Okay, next one. The parking is 127 stalls, about 19,000 square feet. It's a commercial strip. The height is 26 feet 4 inches. Lot coverage is 20%. Maximum lot coverage says basically you can occupy almost all of it with the exception of setbacks. So, advance a little more. Here's a pretty picture. Here's a pretty picture. This is actual layout. So 54 would be on the north side here. And then Main Street, you can see it's called out right here. We will require them to have excuse me. We are going to require them to have a fence on this side, separating them from the duplexes on this side. That's our subdivision requirement, screening from residential when you have a commercial center. They did a good job of moving the parking. The state wants them to keep the parking out of this section here that the state owns. So they did a good job of rerouting the parking around that for continuity and traffic flow. Next slide. These are the elevations. Next slide. Financially unrelated considerations, there are none. Next slide. It is recommended the planning commission approve the site plan for the Paradise Park Commercial Center contingent upon final review of the stormwater plan. Baughman did do a stormwater retention plan in the southeast corner. I have to follow up with Baughman to see that it's detained adequately. I believe it is. Is it detained adequately? Is there any comments you want to make on the detention in the southeast corner?
It's 3 feet deep, it's in the southeast corner, it's all on the surface to be dry. There's a very small 4-inch pipe that actually drains out to the street, and that's where we're taking the majority of the water from the center.
There's a sidewalk along the, well, are we talking about the religious drainage right now?
You're welcome. Actually, SPT is here, and so is Baughman. If you guys want to come up and just come on up. Come on up. Come on up. You guys are sitting first and last name, who you represent, and then any questions with the planning commission, feel free.
Dave Wells with SPT Architecture.
Jeff Ness, Baughman Company.
Are there any plans for the sidewalk on the, are there any plans to replace the sidewalk on the west side along Main Street?
Right now, we've taken it out because that sidewalk right now is in disrepair.
Yeah.
And it is on city property, it's on city right away.
Right. Yeah,
So,
we're having a discussion about that, if we're gonna have it replaced, and how we're gonna manage that.
so, yeah, let's go back to that site plan, keep going. Yeah, that'll work. So yes, there's that correct, there's a sidewalk that goes about to here right now, and it kind of slivers down to nothing, and it's really deteriorated a lot. So we were gonna take it out, and then, we were gonna talk with the city about whether we need to put it back in, or something with the city, if they wanted to have some kind of, pedestrian connection up that way to get over to the center. So that was just, not determined at this point.
Is the water headed south on Main Street, or is it headed southeast across the?
Alright, so nobody loaded the grading plan for some reason, so I can't really show you. Alright, I pointed right here, that detention is about here. The drainage concept from the plat, basically, this all is supposed to be going to the east, this direction. This is all coming down, but we're gonna try to catch this and direct it that way. So we did very little. This is a little 4-inch pipe that kind of leaks out to that street.
And where's that going to?
Yes, where that pipe goes to.
That'll be daylighted into the gutter, and then there'll be storm sewer there on the street.
There ain't gonna be no tank in the ground or anything like that?
No, it's just 3 foot deep. surface detention basin. It'll be dry, except obviously when it rains.
How far back off of Kellogg is that north parking? Aren't they gonna extend?
Quite a ways, we don't have the overall site plan, but
Kellogg Drive is right.
Kellogg
Is it
Drive
up there that far?
is
Okay.
up there quite, we're, I don't know, 120 some feet, so we're quite a ways.
This would be Kellogg Drive. That Kellogg Drive over there, up there.
It's 70 from the right of way.
Oh, okay.
So you got another, what, 25 to 30 foot there.
Thank you.
Yep.
We do currently are showing a drive-through on the east end of the building, potential of a bank, potentially a small bank on this end, and that's why the drive-through on that end. And we do have actually potential of a small drive-through, like a small dry cleaners or small, where we don't have to worry more, pickup window, on the south of the building. But it's a pretty decent sized project. It'll definitely make an impression on that corner, I think. I don't know if you can tell in the rendering materials that we've called out. We've got some brick, we've got stucco, we've got some metal panel, for the most part. I think there's potential, if you had 20-foot tenants, they're typically on the east or on the north side here. These are all 70 feet deep, pretty typical. And we've got doors for every 20 by 70 tenant potentially. You know, tenants don't necessarily are all 20 by 70. But if you did have 20 by 70s plus the south wing and not the corner, I think there is potential like 10 or 11 tenants in the piece of the building. The hopes right now is still that there's hopefully a restaurant in the corner, so that's kind of where they're at. It's roughly about 5,000 feet, so it's pretty good size.
As far as the parking lot counts go, last year we made a change where we decreased the required amount of parking. Have you guys taken advantage of that, or is that?
Well, I mean, we pretty much parked everything we could and maximized the building. So if all this was retail without the restaurant, this would park at about 6.5 to 7 cars per 1,000 square feet, which is up there pretty good, especially for retail. I mean, City of Wichita City Codes, well, it's actually 3 now, we used before. The restaurant will change things if it goes in, because they're gonna have a higher demand, but, you know, a lot of times these restaurants like this aren't gonna have a high demand until after 5 o'clock. So after 5, most of these other small tenants, not all, but a lot of the small tenants won't be open probably. So, it parks pretty well.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
It's your guys' show, we're just gonna watch it.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Any opposed?
Very good.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys. This is item G3, this is the Rachel Brook Estates Edition replat preliminary. So MKC has submitted an application for a replat of a portion of the Rachel Brook Estates. The purpose of the replat would be to redirect the road around the tree to maintain the aesthetic nature of the development. The replat would not add or remove any lots from the development. The city doesn't have a one-step platting process, and so we are requiring a preliminary and a final plat. The final replat would need to be approved by city council. Planning Commission reviewing preliminary replat of Richard Brook Estates Edition. This is what it looks like. You can see here, this is a tree that they're trying to negotiate around. As mentioned, they're not adding or removing lots. This whole development was platted in the county. We annexed it recently. Slide. Financial and legal considerations are none currently. Go back. This slide is missing. So, recommendation it would be that Planning Commission approve the preliminary replat of Richard Brook Estates.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary replat.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Any opposed?
Good.
Very good. G4 is going to be the final replat, so it's more of the same. Yeah, you can advance. Advance some more. Advance some more. This is the cleaned up version, so you can see the difference between the preliminary and the final plat. Advance some more. Hopefully on the last slide, go to the next one. Yep, there it is. Recommendation is to approve the final replat of Rachel Brooks. This would have to be approved by City Council to be finalized.
Make a motion to approve the final replat of Rachel Brooks Estates. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Very good. Next item. This is a site plan, Circle C edition. Next slide. That's too fast, go back. Folgers and Associates, architecture submitted a site plan application for addition of offices and restrooms to the Circle C office building, which is in the industrial district. Building is located in an industrial park on the east side near the cul-de-sac. The building sits a little bit over the setback line, and the developer wants to keep the same material as the original building, and as such, that's typo. A variance was submitted that will be reviewed on a future agenda item, which is coming up today. So go to the next slide. So the offices are about 2,000 square feet. The restroom is 404 square feet. Maximum lot coverage is 45%. With the additions, the lot coverage is 16.5. So that's the maximum is 45. With the two new additions, it's at 16.5 currently. So it's got a lot of space still. Building is potentially over the 35 setback, requiring a variance. The facade matches the existing building and requires planning commission approval. The variance submitted for both facade and setback change are going to be on the next agenda item. So, if you could advance. This is the floor plan layout. The restroom is on the north side of the existing building, and then the offices are on the south side of the existing building. Next slide. This is the elevations. You can see that they're matching the material there. This on the north side, this would be if you're looking at the building, if you're not going from the street. Next slide. This is the existing building. So if you can imagine where the offices would be over here, the restrooms would be in the back. Next building. Next slide, excuse me. So here is the building. This outline over here shows the building footprint where it sits currently. The yellow dashed line is the setback, and these are where the other buildings sit within that setback. So they have a little bit of space here. You can see, go to the next slide. You can see where they cuts over a little bit. So, Folgers and Associates is here. So, if you want, you can come up and speak on the subject matter. The recommendation is to approve it. Go ahead, next one. To approve it contingent upon the variance or setbacks in the facade. So, as mentioned, Folgers and Associates is here. If you want to come up and speak on behalf of Circle C. Circle C is also here, so they have an opportunity to speak.
I'm Don Folger, Folger and Associates. I really don't have anything to add to that. Just to make the design work, we needed to go a little bit farther up over that. And it appeared, looking at some of the aerial maps, that some of the other buildings are already doing that much of that. So that's why I'm asking for variance. If anybody has any questions, I can answer.
Do you know how much it's over the setback?
Yes, it's 2 foot 8 inches or something like close to that. I scaled it off. We had a survey done so we could figure out exactly where that was. Originally, we were working off the GIS maps, and they're not always real accurate to scale. So we had a survey, and it's right at 2 foot 8, 2 foot 9.
If it wasn't for the setback, would you have wanted to make that office even bigger, or is this the ideal size of
I
what you
don't know if I
wanted?
could answer that.
That's pretty much the ideal size.
Yeah, I mean, based on the criteria they gave me, I came up with that size. And well, actually, they kind of helped with that too, but, it just, the configuration works good for them. We probably, it would have been harder to make it work to bring it back because of the number of offices they wanted to get from the existing building out to the front. And parking's not really an issue, because most of their parking is across the street on the lots that they own, the yard that they have across the street. That's where the employees are, so we really have just about as much parking as what they use now. They just pull in right in front of the buildings, and we've added some more on there, on the site plan when you look at that.
Losing 2 foot, or 2.5 foot.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan for the Circle C addition contingent upon the variance for the setbacks and facade.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Alright.
Very good. This is IMH Board of Zoning Appeals, next one. Setback and facade variance, this is the official variance. This is the variance VAR, go back 26-4, thank you, go ahead. So, once again, we kind of went through all this. This is the official variance. Go ahead and move forward a little bit more. So we can't just approve variances arbitrarily, it's gotta be with specific criteria. So there, we're asking that you approve it for number 2 and number 8. Number 2 is the vary the applicable bulk regulations, including maximum height, lot coverage, and minimum yard requirements. And number 8, vary any design-related provision of these regulations, either in part or in full. Such design regulations can include Article 11, which is related to the facade. Advance more. So I have to go through this, so bear with me, everybody included. Per the city attorney, and this is the previous city attorney, not Ryan Peck, who was just here, but Robert Corkinell, who's now retired, that you guys have to take this into account, that this is not a checklist, so once you go through it and you see it, you don't have to say, did they meet all these requirements in order to approve variance? But I have to inflict this upon everybody, so here we are. So the board may grant variance upon specific writing findings of fact based upon the particular evidence presented to it at the hearing that all conditions required by KSH Law 79E have been met. So, number 1, that the variance request arise from such condition which is unique to the property in question and which is not ordinarily found in the same zoning district and is not created by action or actions of property owner or the applicant. So, I don't think it's unique to the property. Clearly, a lot of the properties have gone over the setback. It is interesting that that particular property, though, was already sitting back so far from that setback. Typically, a property is going to be right up to that setback line. So, that's kind of interesting. They have not built these yet, so this is not us correcting something that they've already done. There has been no action taken at this point. That granting the variance not adversely affect the rights of the adjacent property of the residents, as you saw previously, it's not going to affect any of the additional rights of the adjacent property owners. It's going to increase the value of that particular property, and it will have benefit to all those in tandem. That strict application of the provision of these regulations in which a variance is requested will constitute unnecessary hardship upon the property owner. I don't think this is an unnecessary hardship. They could move the offices back to 8 feet 8 inches if we wanted them to. So I don't think saying 2 feet and 8 inches is a deal breaker on this particular part, but that's just something to take into account. That the variance desire would not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, or convenience, and so I don't believe that it's going to be adversely impact any of the morals, orders, convenience of the city. We'll move forward 1. Public notice was given incurring a small cost. It's approved as a form. Per Robert Kuykendall, for guidance does not need to be met in order to grant variance. Next slide. So I need permission to open the public hearing, receive comment from the public, close the public hearing, and approve the variance request VAR 26-4. So Mr. Chair, at this point, we may open the public hearing.
Open the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here who wants to talk about the public hearing? Danny, can you go back a slide? Is there anybody here who wants to talk about the public hearing?
All right, we'll close the public hearing.
Very good. Asking for approval of variance.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance VAR 26-4.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. This I have H2, this is the one-step final plat introduction, so you guys have seen this before, but occasionally we will have plats that are very small, or it's a replat, but only a small section. We require everyone to do a preliminary and a final plat, so we're asking if the planning commission, of course, after which the city council will have to take a final decision, would introduce new language to allow us to forego the preliminary plat and just introduce a final plat for specific projects. So that's what I just described here. Basically, we're saying, advance one more, Danny. Keep on. No, go back. We would ask that the development have basically be less than 10 acres, and the development would also have to be less than 10 lots. So if these two criteria are met, then we can say, yes, you don't need a preliminary plat, all you need is a final plat, in which case we would just submit a final plat to the planning commission and then the city council for final approval. So if these two criteria are met, then we would say you would not need a preliminary plat. This is language we have to add to the subdivision regulations.
So the final plat has less information, or at least different information than the preliminary plat.
Yeah, the final plat's got some very similar information to the preliminary plat, but we remove a lot of that information. The county considers erroneous because they don't want to record it anyway. One example of that would be contours. You see the contours on the preliminary plat, and the contours go away. So typically we remove some of that information. For one thing that you definitely see on a final plat, which is not on a preliminary plat, is that signature blocks that you see, the city attorney, the mayor, the planning commission chair, the county surveyor. That information is on a final plat in what's called signature blocks. That's not included on a preliminary plat. So all those information that's typically filed on a final plat would still be required. We would just forego the information that's required for a preliminary plat. So we would waive a preliminary plat entirely and just go straight to a final plat.
Could we still have all the information? I mean, could it be a final plat but still have both drawings?
No, not ideally. That would just be a preliminary plat and final plat combined, or just be kind of a very, very messy plat.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information that's on a preliminary plat that gets stricken out, and then you have the final plat, which is a cleanup version. I go back and forth. Ryan Track and I talk about this a lot because we talk about what we want to see on plats versus what you don't want to see on plats, and we go back and forth. But in my personal opinion, I don't want to see too much information on a plat unless it's specifically relevant to development. And contours can go away, obviously, and other things can go away. But I would want it stripped out so it's just what the county wants to see also, because the county has very specific requirements that they want to see on a final plat. As long as those requirements are being met, then it can be recorded.
Mike, you might share the why as to why communities allow for a one-step final plat.
Yeah, the big thing for one-step final plats versus having a preliminary every time is that preliminary plats require additional survey work. For one thing, is that you have to go out, you have to find all the contours, you have to identify trees, you have to identify rocks, you have to identify, not all rocks, but big rock structures. You have to identify a lot of additional information that you won't typically have on a final plat. So that requires additional cost and engineering work that a developer has to incur for something as simple as the Rachel Brook Estates final replat on that particular one. You only had 4 lots, but you have to go back out into the field, survey everything that they have around that area to put it on the preliminary plat, only to not have it be recorded on the final plat when it goes before the county. Because the county's not going to want to see any of that information either. And so they're going to want it stripped out as well. And so the preliminary plat forces the developer to put a lot of additional work and time into it for something that will not ultimately be recorded with the Register of Deeds.
So why do they ever need a preliminary plat? Is there a lot of information that's not needed?
So plats have come a long way, and so has technology. So for example, plats used to have so much information on it because you didn't have things like Google or GIS, Google Earth, or any of that information. And so you put everything that you possibly could into that sandwich. I mean, you stuffed it as much as you possibly could because it's going to get recorded with the Register of Deeds, and you want all that information on there. You want meets and bounds, you want the trees, the rocks, the contours, anything that you could possibly find. Nowadays, the final plat has been stripped down to kind of just the bare minimum, because if you're referencing information, it's much easier and much more effective from a technological and ethical perspective to use GIS than it is to have a bunch of stuff recorded on a plat that's stuffed into the Register of Deeds that you have to dive into their database to find that information. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. It's much more effective. Plats have come a long way since the early 1900s to where we are today. And so some of this is sort of residual requirements that have passed down through the ages that, generally speaking, it's much easier for us to simply use GIS and other data available to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
I'll move to approve.
No.
Good, anything? Yeah, sorry, I can't. So first we need you to open the public hearing, receive the comments, close the public hearing, and then approve the modifications to subdivision regulations introduced one-step final plat. We have to take it to city council for final approval, but Mr. Chair, at this point, you can open up.
Okay, open the public hearing.
Very good. Anybody want to talk about one-step final plat?
All right, we will close the public hearing.
Never know.
All right. Approve the modification of the, I make a motion to approve the modification of the subdivision regulations to introduce a one-step final plat process.
And I'll second it.
Who wants that? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Very good. This is the last item for this, this is H3, this is the potential variance for the Kelson RV sign. Go ahead and go next. So Vermeer has sold the building off of the North Frontage Road, next to Barber Road to Kelson RV. According to the subdivision regulations, any time a change in ownership occurs and a full sign is in use to mark the business, it must be converted to a monument sign. This process generally entails either removing the sign and starting over, or wrapping the sign to make it conform to the monument sign criteria. Part of this criteria is the base must be at least 50% of the width of the face of the sign. Due to the landscaping with the dirt mound it is sitting on, it makes it difficult to add a cement pad to allow the pole wrap to increase the size requirement necessary to meet the monument sign criteria. The sign is 144 inches wide, meaning the pole wrap must be 72 inches wide to meet the criteria of a monument sign. The owner's asking the sign could be 36 inches. So this goes back to the 7 o'clock comment that we heard earlier. The Planning Commission is reviewing the possibility of allowing Kelson RV to convert a full sign to a monument sign. So we're not going through an official variance today, but I am showing you that under the variance on Article 10, 107C, we're referring to 5 on this particular one, which is saying that you can consider that under Article 10. But since we have to wait 20 days to consider a variance, you guys will officially see this in June. They're asking if they can start that process now. And here's why. Go ahead, Danny. This is why. So, you know, me being the mean planning person, I said, nope, you can't do this. And they said, well, what about this? And I said, that sounds like a planning commission question. So here you guys are. But like I said, with a variance, we have to publish it within 20 days per state law. So we can't officially open a public hearing and do all that today. It's got to be in June. They want to know if they can start this now. And if you guys would feel that favorably towards that.
You mean allowing the 36 inch instead of the
72, yeah.
Right. Well, when I drove by there tonight, I mean, the bricks look nice, the grass is nice, the trees, or the gravel and everything. I really don't have a problem with it, because if they were gonna put in the right side, they'd have to tear all that out.
That was their concern.
I just have one little question. The sign looks like it could be turned. I don't know if that'd be favorable or unfavorable for you. If it was facing this way versus this way, I think you could get the width that we're looking for.
Yeah, so just unfavorable because the traffic going east and west, and then the sign being, we're gonna have a sign, building sign as well that'll be facing that direction, so we're kind of looking to catch attention from Kellogg.
Okay. What material is that going to be, the new base?
It's gonna be just the same kind of material that the actual sign's gonna be as well. The sign company I'm working with called it a skirt. So basically skirting it, they said they would have to do this a lot in maize as well to make it more of the monument style instead of the full style you see.
And I see it says the address is optional. Are you going to do that, or?
I was planning on doing the address up and down like that instead of it just being plain white. I thought the plain white was a little much.
start on it now before we vote on it.
Exactly. So, let's advance, Danny. So, legal considerations, obviously, we would have to wait until June. As mentioned, variances, that they're not a checkbox, they're for guidance. But of course, if variance is denied, they would have to take it to district court, they can't take it to city council and protest. Can I answer more, Danny? Direct them to the planning commission, deliberate and direct staff accordingly. And let us know if you feel favorably about the variance, and if so, they could proceed, and then you guys could formally adopt the variance in June.
And what is the base material gonna be made out of?
The same kind of plastic material that the sign Kettleson will be made out of. They called it a skirt. I'm not sure of that exact material, to be honest, I haven't asked.
So they're wanting to put a plastic skirt on the bottom. Yeah,
Correct.
like that. What about brick?
We have not looked into the cost of what it take for brick.